The subject matter of this program, as well as some images, are graphic in nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
To get on a boat and just go, not knowing what you're going to find at the other end. I mean, they had so much courage. I mean, I don't even know anybody that compares to the courage that they had.
It's almost a miracle how they were able to maintain their sanity. Escaping the genocide, coming here, not knowing the language, not knowing the customs, not knowing what kind of reception they were going to get. And they made it.
It was their faith. It was their faith, I guess, that kept them alive, and their stubbornness to survive.
I mean, Armenians are Armenians, and they're going to do their thing wherever they are, you know. They have their music, they have their culture, they have their food, and, you know, they're going to thrive no matter where you put them. No matter what the circumstances are, they'll make the best out of a situation.
I feel we have it easy when you think back to what my parents and what they went through the Depression, and then you think of what your grandparents when they came here with nothing and started a life, and what I have today is because of what they started when they first came here.
To be successful in life, you have to have perseverance, you have to have hard work, you have to be a fighter. I mean, these are things that are in our blood, I believe.
To come here with nothing, to escape a genocide, come here with nothing, and have your next generation accomplish. It's just amazing.
That successes that you see, it takes a lot of hard work and determination. It doesn't happen by itself.
The fertile Central Valley is home to one of the largest Armenian populations in the world. An estimated 50,000 Armenians live here. The first Armenian immigrants arrived in the late 1800s. Thousands more followed after the genocide that killed 1.5 million Armenians 100 years ago. They came seeking a better life, the chance to practice religion freely, provide for their families, and live the American dream. This is their story. Valley of Hope, the Armenian journey from terror to triumph.
Major production funding for this program was provided by the Leon S. Peters Foundation, Mrs. Frank Roxy Meradian, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Armenian history is very, very old, and we know very certainly about Armenian history at least as far back as about 3,000 years. The area that they have lived is partially what is today in Turkey, the western part of historic Armenia, and then what is today the Republic of Armenia and Karabakh were also part of that historic homeland. So all of the major events in Armenian history took place on that area of the Armenian highlands. It's called the Armenian Highlands. That's not an empire name, but rather a geographic designation because it's a very mountainous area, but then also descends into lowlands and plateaus. We think that there were several million Armenians even 1,000 years ago. So actually the number of Armenians has not increased that greatly as would be expected if you looked at normal growth patterns because of wars and invasions. But Armenians were a significant number of the world population 2,000 years ago.
The Christian message was brought to Armenia by St. Thaddeus and St. Bartholomew. So Christianity was started with them. They brought it from the Holy Land. But it was basically an underground religion. It was persecuted.
In the 4th century, the Armenian king Tertad was baptized and became a Christian through the efforts of a man today called St. Gregory the Illuminator. And he is considered to be the sort of the forefather of Christianity in Armenia. So we date it from the early 4th century. The official church date is 301 AD.
And in that sense, Armenia was the first nation to adopt Christianity as a nation. The church has been there ever since.
Very early in Armenian history, the idea of being a Christian and being an Armenian was melded together. Being an Armenian was instantly identifiable with being Christian. So Christianity was a very rapidly spreading religion already in the 4th century, soon to become the dominant religion in the world. The Ottoman Empire forms beginning in the 13th century, really beginning in the area of west of what is today the modern city of Istanbul. And then they began to spread eastward, eventually conquering Constantinople, which it was called, which was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, in 1453. And they first came into contact with Armenians probably with that conquest. And then within about 50 years, they conquered much of the remainder of Asia Minor, including the Armenian highlands. And that's how large numbers of Armenians came into the Ottoman Empire. In the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire began to fall apart. And if you look at some of the areas that are today, countries like Greece and Serbia, the people there within the Ottoman Empire began to rebel in the early 19th century. And so they wanted to be free because the rule of the Ottomans had become oppressive. And in the late 19th century, in the really late 19th century, the Armenians also began to become aware of their second-class citizenship.
The Armenians were at the bottom of the ladder in terms of any type of political influence. The governance of the area, the rulers were the Turkish residents. The Armenians were the peasants. They were the serfs who basically worked, in many cases, for the Turkish farmers or business owners. Some of the Armenians actually engaged in their own businesses as well as tradesmen, whether they were repairing shoes or in metalworks or whatever. And some of them were fairly successful, according to my grandfather's memoirs.
In the old country, the family had a leather tannery in Constantinople. However, they had an office in Marseille, France. They had an office in Ethiopia, and they had an office in a place called Trabzon, Turkey. They were one of the well-known families of the old world. People who had seen the family home in the old world that were here before us. On one occasion, when the grocer said, "Hello, Mr. Saachin, how are you?" And the man turned around and said, "Who is this Mr. Saachin?" He recognized the name. And I said, "I am." "Oh," he said, "you should see what a home your family had in the old country."
My grandfather had a big store that had all kinds, like a general store. And because the weather in Erzurum had a very short summer and they had severe winters, and they spoke Kurdish fluently, he would go in the summer and go to the Kurdish villages and sell materials and anything that they needed. That was his primary business.
I think it's sometimes lost on people that there were just a series of atrocities committed against the Armenian population in their historical homeland dating back to the 1800s.
Abdul Hamid II was the leader of the Ottoman Empire from 1876 to 1909. Under his reign, the Ottomans killed several 100,000 Armenians. Hamid was given the name the Bloody Sultan because of the massacres.
Well, there were periodic massacres of Armenians on a smaller scale, both before the 1895 massacres and after. The most significant after was in 1909 in Adana. It's called the Adana massacres, and 30,000 Armenians were killed in the Turkish Empire in 1909. That was the immediate precursor for the genocide. I would say that most Armenians would not have expected that there would be a genocide. They had been used to massacres, but massacre means they were killing some people, but they never had planned the complete extermination and deportations. So the scale and the massiveness of what took place in 1915 was very different than what had ever taken place. So many Armenians were surprised, didn't expect it, and would not have expected it, even in the conditions leading up to it.
In 1908, there was a new constitution for minorities in Turkey. And all of our clan that was in Erzurum, they had close Turkish friends. And there was supposed to be freedom for minorities, more justice. And they told all of our people that this was a plan to get all the Armenians to stay, to be there, and that they were going to be exterminated. My grandfather said, this is the best it's ever been. Business is good. We're friendly with everybody. My family is here. I'm not going to leave.
They had 7 vineyards, and they had they were a well-to-do family. They had a peaceful life, and all of a sudden that got interrupted.
Armenian males had been drafted into the Ottoman Turkish army earlier in 1914 because World War I had broken out. In February and March already, Armenians serving in the Ottoman army were separated out into battalions, Armenian battalions, where their arms were taken away, and they were either worked to death, literally doing very hard physical labor in very bad conditions, or they were killed. So that was the first phase of the Armenian genocide, was to eliminate much of the male population, the population between 25 and 65 years of age.
My father actually was born in Muş, Turkey. He went to college in Constantinople. He was inducted into the Turkish army, as so many of the Armenians were, to be used as cannon fodder, I'm sure. But he defected, and somehow he hooked up with the French Foreign Legion, became a member of the Armenian Legion of the French Foreign Legion, and fought against the Turks. One of the reasons he defected was he learned that his family in Hasku, his mother, father, siblings, uncles, aunts, grandparents, so forth, were gathered in the local church and set ablaze. And he just, when he found that out, he could not stay with the Turkish army at all, and that's when he defected.
My grandmother passed away when I was 3 years old, so I never spoke with her directly about it. But we've heard the story over and over and over again from my aunt. My dad would never speak about it. He would break into tears anytime he spoke about his mother, Rose. But basically what happened was the people in the village had heard that the Ottoman soldiers were going to be coming into the village. So my grandmother's mother sewed coins into her dress. She put her on a horseback with her brother, patted the horse in the butt so the horse can get out of the village. They rode up to the top of the hill. Her father, my grandmother's father, was a village leader, and he was forced to watch his son beheaded in the village. His son was either a lawyer or a doctor, I can't recall which, but they beheaded him in front of his father, and then they beheaded the father. And by the time my grandmother got up to the top of the hill, she watched the rest of the villagers herded into the church, where they were all burned alive. And then she escaped actually to a home of a Turkish family that hid her and her brother underneath the floorboards when the Ottoman soldiers were coming around looking for the people that had escaped.
What happened on April 23rd, the night of April 23rd, and the morning of April 24th, was that the Ottoman authorities in the capital city of Constantinople sent out arrest warrants for leading Armenians living within the capital. And some put the number at over 250, 260 Armenians. These were the doctors, lawyers, political leaders, anybody that was important within the community was arrested. They were sent out in convoys outside of the city eventually, and most of them were eventually massacred. So that date of the 24th of April is considered to be the symbolic date for the genocide.
My mother's teachers, she remembers seeing them hanging from the gallows in the square in Constantinople. So things went pretty much upside down at that point.
The next major phase, which began in May of 1915, were the deportations. So in every town, in every village, Armenians were given a set number of days, usually a day, 3 days, to begin a deportation under the pretext that they were being moved for their own safety because of World War I, but they were forced to leave their homes with almost no provisions, no food, no water, and forced to march by the government. And usually most of those people died simply from exposure.
When 1915 came, all of my father's family was in the genocide. He was in school. He told me that the soldiers came one day and they said, "This school is closed, go home." And when he got home, his family, with a few of their belongings, were standing in the street. with my uncle, who's older than my father. I had interviewed him, and he told me that there was 3 groups of Armenians, about 9 to 10,000 in each group. And they told him that they were going to be exiled from Erzurum. They were going to be taken to a safer place.
This is an eyewitness recollection by my uncle, Vartkes Darbastian. My name is Vartkes Darbastian. I was born in Erzurum in 1910. When I was only 5 years old, the Turks came and herded us together like cattle. They told us to leave everything behind, all of our belongings, and that when we came back, we could reclaim them. So we left everything we had and we started walking.
Well, the route was usually to the south, to the area of what is today northern Syria and northern Iraq, which we call the Syrian desert. Aleppo was a major staging ground, and along the Euphrates River, so people were actually just sent into the desert, which puts a lie to the pretext that they were going to be placed somewhere, that they were going to be safe, and then move back after this event.
The Turks walked us for about 15 or 20 miles before they started searching us. They took everything we had, watches, jewelry, and anything else they could get their hands on. They even took our shoes. I remember my mother wrapping my feet in scraps of material so that I wouldn't cut my feet as we were marched over the sharp rocks.
When they got to near Erzinga, they separated everyone. They took my grandfather and my father's oldest brother, and he had gold pieces on him. He tried to buy off that, and it didn't happen. They took those 2 and they shot him with the rest of the men.
The Turks separated all the men from our group and marched them another 5 or 6 miles away from us. Then they started shooting them. They shot every man in our group. And then, all of a sudden, the Kurds came down from the mountainside and started throwing rocks at the people, at the dead people, so that they were sure no one would be left alive.
My uncle, that was older than my dad by a few years, they had his hands all tied, but somehow they let him go. My father said that he was in front with another little Armenian kid. My father was about 8 years old because he was in the 3rd grade. And this other Armenian kid was lame. He had something was wrong with his leg. And he said, the soldier told the head man, how about these 2 males? What are we going to do with them? Are we going to shoot them too? He said, nah, just leave them alone. They'll die on the way from starvation.
My father's mother was one of the unfortunate victims of the genocide, and she and her sister and her mother, as I understand it, marched in one of the death marches that we heard of. She and her sister and her mother blackened their teeth. They apparently walked with limps, hoping to kind of just make themselves look unappealing, but she witnessed her mother being brutalized, and my father says she witnessed her mother being raped and killed.
I was sitting on a hillside, and there was a little girl sitting about 10 feet away from me. All of a sudden, this Turk came and pulled this girl by the hair and dragged her all the way down the hillside, and then he shot her. He shot this girl. Then I started running. I ran all the way back to my mother.
It's my dad's side of the family. My grandmother on that side of the family was from Harpet, the region of Harpet, and she was actually an American citizen. She was living here in Boston, and just the spring of 1915, they decided to go home. They became homesick. They decided to go home. So her husband and 3 children at that point went back to Armenia and got caught in the massacre. They marched all the kids and the women out of town and stabbed them, clubbed them, did whatever, horrible things they did. When she came to, she didn't die, and when she came to, there were, the story as I understand it, there were mounds of bodies everywhere, and she searched for her 3 children for, several hours and never found their bodies. And so she really went to her grave not knowing what happened to her 3 children.
On our march, each time we came to a river or water source, the Turkish soldiers stood guard over the water with guns, and if anyone dared to approach the water, they were shot and killed. When we came to Deir Zor, the Arabian desert, the Turks dug a large hole. They put about 20 men in the hole and covered them with dirt, burying them alive. When we came back, the earth was still shaking with their struggle for life.
These Armenians were sent to specific areas. If they survived, then they were just kept there for a while, and then they certainly died after that because there was no food there anyway. So these were simply killing places to finish the genocide.
Only my grandmother survived from her family. They killed her brother in front of her mother and her eyes as well. They literally decapitated her brother in her mother's lap. You can imagine how difficult it is to even imagine such atrocity. And not only that, they killed everyone else.
My mother's father was killed, he was shot and didn't drop. So they went and got the butcher across the street and they cut his head off.
My mother's mother was there, and she really is, or was, a genocide survivor. She saw the most atrocious things, unspeakable acts of terror and torment committed against her siblings. She saw her father, who was a priest and therefore a leader in their area. She saw her father and her mother both tortured, maimed, and murdered.
My dad was only 8 years old. I think about 8 years old at the time of the massacres. And at that time, his father was killed. His mother was taken away from the children. So that left my dad, his brother, and a sister. So there were the three of them. I had a conversation, and I videoed a conversation with my Uncle Aby, back in Boston about 10, 12 years ago. He's since passed away, of course. And he said, I remember, told a story where my uncle acquired a donkey. Don't ask me where the donkey came from, I don't know. But he got a donkey, and he got the three of them. He led the donkey for miles and miles and miles until they ended up at an orphanage in Aleppo, Syria.
My dad lost one family before marrying my mother. He had a wife and one son. And in the march, the wife died, the child died. He survived. Somehow he survived.
Well, some were just able to survive because they were saved at the end of the war. Somehow they had survived, and then they were saved by missionaries. They were saved by soldiers sometimes. They were saved by Arab families. Sometimes just by fate. You know, they escaped in the middle of the night, or they did something. Somehow they survived, and then they were able to emigrate to places like Lebanon, and then many came to Europe and to the United States. The numbers are hard to determine in an exact sense, but when we say the number 1.5 million, that approximates the total number of Armenians killed in the period between 1915 and 1923.
Finally the war ended in 1918. The English came in and started giving us bread. I got a loaf of French bread. I took it and held it tightly close to my body. I was so scared that somebody was going to grab it, so I ran into a toilet stall, hid there, and finished the whole thing.
Almost every family has some kind of relation to the genocide. My parents, my father actually, who had 3 sisters and 3 brothers, he lost all of them. He was the only survivor who came to this country.
My mother was alone. She lost her whole family, entire family, except one nephew and one sister.
My mother's mother, she was an orphan. She wandered around with other orphans, seeking refuge where they could, and help where they could, and sustenance where they could. And ultimately, she was raised at a certain point, about the age of 10, in an orphanage.
Us as humans, as we face challenges, we get stronger. My grandmother was a very strong lady. I think that atrocity that she witnessed brought in her strength and determination. And the determination in terms of not only I'm going to survive, I'm going to make sure that I will create my own family. And that annihilation concept that they had will never come into fruition.
In the years following the genocide, survivors found refuge in places across the globe. Large populations made a life for themselves in Europe and the Middle East. Armenian communities even began popping up in South America and Australia. A large percentage of survivors made their way here, to America.
We think that between 1830 and about 1880, there were no more than 1,500 Armenians that had come to the United States. 1881 is when the first Armenians in Fresno permanently settled, which became the nucleus for the California Armenian community.
The first Armenians to settle in the Central Valley were the Soropian brothers, Hagop, Garabed, and Simon, and their half-brothers Kevork and Hovhannes. They came to Fresno.
The brothers were living on the East Coast, and one of the brothers had bad breathing problems, either emphysema or sort of a bronchitis. Didn't like the temperature and the climate there, and had come to Fresno to see if it might be a drier, more amenable climate. He liked it, and so he came and he brought his brothers eventually, and then they sent letters back to other family members and friends, and that began the immigration. By 1910, there probably were 20,000 Armenians living in the Central Valley. Thousands more came. After 1918, large numbers of Armenians began to settle here.
Like most immigrants in the first half of the 20th century, the majority of Armenians that made their way to America came through Ellis Island in New York.
Our name was changed from Bedrosian to Peters at the American Bible House in Constantinople prior to shipment to the United States. Uncle John took refuge in the American Bible House, and at that time they couldn't pronounce Armenian names, so they translated. Bedros in Armenia means Peter, so that was the son of Peter. That's how they came out with Peters.
When the kids came through Ellis Island, they were scared stiff and they didn't know what was going to happen. And the immigration officer who, talked to them, when my Uncle Aby came through the line, the officer said, Aby Hanimian, right? And he put an H instead of a G. And my uncle used to tell us a story. He was so frightened that something was going to happen if he tried to correct him and make it right. He didn't correct it. He didn't say, no, it's a G. So all his life, he ended up as a Hanimian instead of a Ganimian because of the H. He never changed it. His whole life, he never changed it.
My paternal grandfather, when he came to Ellis Island, they asked, what is your name? And he said, well, I am the son of the Buruji, which, as I understand, means thread maker. So that's how he was given the name Burugian. I think his last name in Armenia was something different.
My dad's mom, she didn't come through Ellis Island like so many of the immigrants. She came through San Francisco, from Japan to San Francisco, and then ended up in Fresno. She had relatives here in Fresno and came here and married my grandfather. She had two complete families, one there, 3 children and a husband, and then came here and had 3 more children.
As far as my mother's mother, she came over, as I understand it, in 1920, and she came over with a group of women who they were brought here to Fresno in hopes of establishing a life here. And she came here and I think after being in Fresno maybe for about a month and a half, got married. So these young women came here and they found husbands and started building a life here.
they were hardworking people, and they faced major obstacles. I think back on it in terms of the courage that it took to pick up and leave your homeland and to come to a new land without any funds, only with dreams. It's an amazing story of perseverance, not only involving my own grandparents, but so many others here in the Fresno area.
As is in the case in most cities, like immigrants grouped together, so most Armenians lived on the west side of Fresno. That was the place where they first came. And then the church was built, the Holy Trinity Church was built, and then it burnt down by a fire, and then the new church was built in 1914 at its current location.
Where the hotel is now, the convention center is, and a lot of other multi-story building. It was all Armenian town.
This was a thriving Armenian neighborhood. There were a lot of Armenians living here. There were houses all over the place.
This is Holy Trinity right here, and we are standing right here.
Midge Barrett is standing in what's left of Armenian town. 5 homes preserved by the city of Fresno sit on a patch of land at Santa Clara and M Street. Both of Barrett's grandparents have ties to Armenian town. One of her grandfathers led a small church and print shop. The other owned and operated a neighborhood swimming pool.
This was a summer kitchen. The idea, the concept is that no central air conditioning in these homes at all. So if you needed to cook, you needed to do it somewhere, not in your house. So hence the summer kitchen.
The homes in Armenian town were fairly small, but they were just steps away from Armenian churches, markets, and bakeries.
In other areas of Fresno, there were land covenants that Armenians were not able to purchase property in these other areas.
There were, however, Armenians living in the outskirts of Fresno, on farms and ranches.
My father's family settled in the Lone Star area. It's like a village in Fresno County. It's between Fresno and Sanger, a farm area, and there were several families. There are a couple of streets where almost every 20 acres was somebody that was a relative of ours.
Armenians also settled in communities such as Fowler, Selma, and Reedley. In the South Valley, the small Armenian town of Yedem was established, not far from Dinuba and Visalia. Father Vartan Kasparian served as the parish priest at St. Mary Armenian Church in Yedem from 1974 to 1990, and then again from 2003 to 2012. For the families in these rural farming towns, the early days were difficult.
There was not a particularly warm reception. There was people coming from a strange land, speaking a language that the local people didn't understand, worshiping in a different way, speaking in a different way, eating in a different way. So in the initial years, it was difficult.
When they came, they didn't have the opportunities we did. They just had to go to work, and they did whatever they could to make a living.
Many Armenians got into farming. I think the first generation were also small businessmen, grocery store owners, again, the craftsmen, the shoemakers. All of these people were things that Armenians would get involved in.
In the early days, they were very poor. They didn't know how to speak the language. They learned the language at that time, and nobody liked them, but they were here. And they were hard workers. I know Grandpa came, and his first job was a laborer in the agriculture field about where Manchester Center is now.
Our people were saved by the canneries. All the ethnic people went to the canneries for a temporary job. Then each one, little by little, when they saved money, they either became a farmer, or if they were business people, they became a businessman. In my father's case, he tried fig packing, but after learning the business and working, he tried it, but the language was a barrier. He didn't know how to speak English. He knew how to speak French, and 2, 3 other languages, but he didn't know English. So he decided, I'm going to be a farmer. And that's what he became. It was a struggle to farm those days. And only 20 acres, we couldn't make our living. So when I became a teenager, we still continued to work in the cannery to make ends meet.
They struggled a lot. I know my grandfather, when he came here in 1913, worked in agriculture, but he didn't make much money. He didn't really own property. He worked for other people. And then, of course, they were, victims of the Depression. And my grandparents had 6 children, so they had a large family, didn't make a whole lot of money. So my grandfather was a laborer. I think he worked in packing houses, and they struggled a lot.
My grandfather, when he got here, they put him at Emerson Grammar School, which was in Armenian Town, and they put him in the 3rd grade, and he couldn't speak any English, and they start making fun of him. He didn't like it because he said I was too old for those little kids, and they were laughing because I couldn't speak. So he says, I just dropped out. So he quit, and he went to work for Rosenberg Packing, and he wanted to, after he worked, he wanted to do something on his own. So he went into agriculture, went into farming.
Well, the biggest challenges they had in those days were making a living and staying alive. My grandma died in 1923, leaving my grandpa with 5 kids. And so grandpa was mother and father and everything else to those 5 kids.
I know my grandfather, George, used to have 3 different jobs, but they worked very hard. Then George died when my grandmother was very young. My dad was 10 at the time, and his youngest brother was just born. And my grandmother decided that she wanted to leave. They were in Euclid, Ohio, and she wanted to move out to California, where there were a lot of distant relatives that had told them there was a better life out there. So my grandmother drove all the way to California. As my dad would say, most of the time on the wrong side of the road. They got to California. They stopped in Fresno originally and spent several days, if not weeks, in different Armenian homes that took them in.
There was sadness. My mother's mother, she sang these dirge-like melancholy songs or hymns that I didn't always understand them. I understood very little of it, but it had an impact on me and my brothers and, of course, our parents, because we knew that she was thinking about the loss of her family and what she went through. She also had physical issues that were directly related, as doctors later said, to her experience as a child with frostbite. So she had serious problems with arthritis and some crippling aspects of things that happened to her that were the result of frostbite and other deprivation.
There were problems. Armenians were treated poorly. There was discrimination, so legal discrimination. Armenians couldn't live in certain neighborhoods in Fresno. They were not allowed to join the police force, not to become teachers until the 1930s and 1940s.
We heard stories about people not getting, graduating from Fresno State, not being able to get teaching jobs, people that were outstanding athletes that had to go out of town because they weren't welcome to play on teams locally in college. There were lots of stories like that.
Armenians weren't allowed into fraternities and sororities because they had an Armenian last name, that when they sat down to talk about buying a home, they were told there were no homes available, that they couldn't buy them. And that was because, like, Sunnyside was a very, very important area that today lots of Armenians live in, but at that time Armenians were not allowed in. Fig Garden was another area.
They experienced lots of discrimination. The people that were here didn't like the Armenians for whatever the reason. I guess they didn't know.
When I married Jerry, there was a great prejudice against Armenians, a really great prejudice. I had people tell me not to marry an Armenian. That wasn't good, all that.
When I was at Fort Ord in the Army, that's what they called me. Hey, you Fresno Indian.
My aunt and my mom were from Chicago. When they came here, my aunt still talks about how she was so surprised by the discrimination that the Armenians were facing here in Fresno, because they had never seen any of that in Chicago. They hadn't experienced any of that. So it was a real surprise to them that that was occurring here in Fresno.
When my parents went to school, both my mother and father, all they knew how to speak was Armenian. Even though they were born in the United States, their home language was Armenian. So when they went to school, I think it was difficult for them because they couldn't speak English. And because of that, I think they felt discrimination in the classroom.
If you are identified because you belong to a certain group, whether by racial discrimination or other kinds of discrimination, you have kind of two options in a very broad sense. One is that you become, in a sense, forced to become more Armenian because people treat you differently, and so you become prouder and want to just show that by your hard work you do fit in. The other way might be to try to assimilate. So some people may have changed their last names. They may have just tried to, and even moved in order to get better educational opportunities, to be able to mix into society quicker.
The name change occurred when my father graduated from high school. His name in the yearbook at Reedley High School was Benjamin Bogdasarian. So, and it was immediately after that that he and his brother set up business in Fowler when they purchased this service station, and they went into business as Baxter Brothers. But the name change was for the entire family. In other words, my aunts and everyone involved in the Bogdasarian clan all went through that same name change. And I'm sure it was in an effort to avoid the discrimination that existed at that time.
My baptismal name is Avedis. Avedis in Armenian means the bringing of good news, and it's usually people who are born around Armenian Christmas. They name them Avedis. But when I went to school, they had a hard time in those days pronouncing ethnic names, so my mother said, his name is Richard, and it stayed that way.
Uncle Lee was a member of the Armenian American Citizens League at a very young age. He might have been prior to his graduation from high school. And the purpose of the AACL was to make American citizens out of Armenians. I think Uncle Lee wanted to be a proud American, assimilate into the American society as much as he could, or fully, I should say, and become an American. I can't speak Armenian today very well, not at all. And because they wanted us to learn English, they wanted us to learn the American ways, whatever it was. We never learned the language.
They had a very difficult early years of their lives, but coming here to the United States, they brought those memories with them, but they didn't come in a depressed state. I think more than anything else, they were grateful for the opportunity to come here to the United States, to live in a land that was free, to retain their culture and yet assimilate in the American culture. They taught me and my family pride not only in being Armenian, but in being Americans.
We learned at an early age the work ethic and the value of making money. And that also gave you the value of how to spend money. From way back, the Armenians believed in schooling, and they valued highly education because they knew the value of education could get you ahead.
There's a very strong cultural history in Armenia, among Armenians, about the importance of education. Learning to read and write, there's a very high premium on that. There's a very high premium on being educated. Armenians were always wanting to seek to better themselves, and they saw that the best avenue to bettering themselves was to get an education. So initially that's just even high school, but Later, Armenians sent their children to college in great numbers because that was the avenue to success and to success in America. Today, if you ask somebody about Armenians, many people in here in Fresno will say, oh, they're very rich or they're prosperous. They may be, but it's not overnight. It wasn't as if they suddenly became. There were 2 or 3 generations of really hard work to get to that point where they were able to really prosper.
There's so many great stories of accomplishment from people who did at first face some really difficult times.
We're proud that an Armenian has achieved something. So any Armenian that's achieved something, there's so many, right, in the legal field or in politics, we're just simply proud that they have achieved.
Something enjoyed in the old country that Armenians introduced to the Central Valley is lavash, Armenian cracker bread. There are 3 family-run businesses producing cracker bread in the Central Valley: Akmak Bakeries in Sanger, Valley Lavash, and High Quality Bakery in downtown Fresno's Old Armenian Town. At High Quality Bakery, the Ghanimian family has been making authentic cracker bread since opening in 1957.
That dough, it just came out of the mixer. We cut it in pieces and we put it on this belt, and the belt takes it up and drops it into a hopper. The system we use to bake the bread is exactly what we used to do when we did it by hand. As soon as the bread hits the oven belt, it starts to bubble up. This is the best way to eat cracker bread, right out of the oven. So I'll cut some bread out here. Perfect in every way.
Sammy Ghanimian's parents, Yervant and Grace, moved to Fresno from Boston in 1957. The original high-quality bakery was a 1,200-square-foot building on L Street near Ventura in Old Armenian Town. Yervant, a genocide survivor, worked as a baker in Boston, but he didn't begin making cracker bread until moving to Fresno.
He formulated and played with the cracker bread until he got his mix exactly the way he wanted it and perfected it. And it's the same mix that we use when we mix our bread today that we used in 1957. Nothing has changed.
Sammy grew up working in his parents' bakery, studied television and film at Fresno State, got his master's at UCLA, and had no intention of taking over the family business. But in the end, he did. And in 1978, High Quality Bakery moved up the street to Santa Clara and L, where they installed a production line.
And that gave us the capacity to make more bread and to ship nationally and distribute nationally, and that's what we did.
Yervant Ghanimian passed away in 1979. Sammy's mother, Grace, was able to see the company she started with her husband flourish. She passed away in 2010 at the age of 97.
We say we've gone from a little mom and pop shop to maybe a little bigger mom and pop shop. It's still the same thing, still run by the family.
Sammy's wife, Paula, and their daughter, Joy, help keep High Quality Bakery running. Chances are, if you come into the bakery, Paula or Joy will greet you, along with cracker bread. High Quality Bakery sells a wide variety of Armenian foods.
In the fridge and in the freezer, we have lahmacun, which we make here ourselves, and it's quite popular with our customers and usually sells out very quickly. We have cheese barags, which are the triangles made with jack cheese, parsley, and phyllo dough. And we have subarag, which is the homemade egg noodle dough with jack cheese, parsley, and you bake it off. The 7-inch round, which can be eaten dry or moistened. Armenians wet their bread, put it in towel, make it soft, and eat it kind of like a naan bread or a tortilla. Everybody kind of has their own thing.
The traditions of High Quality Bakery are being passed on to the youngest in the Ghanimian family.
My grandson, he says, when I get grown up, I'm going to work at High Quality Bakery. I said, well, I hope you do.
In the 1980s, the Ghanimians developed the High Roller, a soft, pliable sheet of bread specifically developed so you can easily make rolled and wrapped sandwiches. For 14 years, High Quality Bakery provided all of the bread Costco used to make the pinwheel sandwiches they sell in their delis. The Ganemians credit the success of their bakery to their customers.
The customers we've had all these years are like family. You know, when people come in, it's not just, you know, how can I help you today? And they get their bread and they go and they come. But it's always, how's your family? How is everybody? So you have a visit, you know, you talk to people, and you know everybody's history. You know everybody's family, who's sick, who's not sick, what's going on in everybody's life. So that's the way High Quality operates. You know, people come in here and it's family.
Agriculture is the economic engine that drives the Central Valley. So it's no surprise that many Armenians have made their careers in farming.
They usually started small with family farms, and then over time, you know, there would be innovators that would develop, and they figured out to get more land, to become packing house owners, because that became very important. Fresh fruit distributors, dried fruit distributors, into almonds and other kinds of nuts.
The mainstay was always farming. Really, within a generation or so, they went from working in the fields to owning the fields.
Okay, this is the beginning of the raisin processing line. Basically, take raw raisins, wash them, clean them, de-stem them, and then we pack them for shipment. And we ship in the United States and throughout the world. We have several labels that we pack under. This is our Victor Organic label. Then we have our Madeira brand label. Well, we also have Liberty Bell brand, and that's sort of in remembrance of what my grandparents went through during the 1915 genocide and deportation. They were forced to leave their homeland in Armenia and come to America, where they were so grateful to be in this great country of ours of freedom.
The Sahachin family are fourth-generation farmers. Sarkis Sahachin and his brother Haig founded Victor Packing in Madeira in 1963. The raisin processing plant is named after their father, who first got into agriculture after coming to the Central Valley in 1924.
And his name was Vagar Shag.
Vagar Shag.
But they called him Victor when he came to the new country.
Yeah, they couldn't say the word Vagar Shag at the cannery where his first job was. And one day the boss says, "Let me call you Vic. Is that all right, Victor?" And he just smiled and says, "All right."
Sarkis Sahachin was the first child born in the Sahachin family after the genocide. He was born in Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul, in 1920.
That one is your
great-grandfather,
Sarkis Sahachin.
That's who I'm named after.
After spending a few years living in Argentina, the family followed other relatives to the Fresno area.
This is the ticket stub.
It is.
From the boat from Buenos Aires.
I'll be.
It says third class. And the name of the boat or ship is the Voltaire.
Voltaire, correct. That's the ship that we came on to America then.
Sarkis came to Fresno with his parents, brother, and cousin. They lived in multiple locations in and around Armenian town before moving to a farm at Chateau Fresno and McKinley. To supplement his income, Sarkis' dad worked as a cobbler. He would repair shoes with the tools he brought with him from Argentina. Sarkis served in the Air Force during World War II. He was stationed in Guam. After his return, he married his wife, Iris. They have 3 children, Victor, Margaret, and Bill. To support his family, Sarkis worked as a high school bus driver in Madeira. He was also a mechanic. Then at age 43, his life changed.
My brother suggested, why don't we go in the raisin business? And we decided, all right, let's give it a try. The philosophy my father had and instilled in us was, if you don't succeed at one thing, try another. And it worked for us. So we tried this. After a lot of suffering, we succeeded. We started with used equipment. and the manufacture of the equipment for raisin was Valley Welding and Machine Works. The owner of that told me when I said, I don't have a building. He said, don't worry, I will build a building. You pay me when you can do it. We started out by doing a few tons, and then we'd build up to 1,000 tons, then 2,000 tons, and I think we're up around 35,000 tons now. If you're not afraid to work, you can make something out of yourself.
Sarkis loves what farming has done for not only himself, but his family and the employees of Victor Packing. He knows his parents would be proud.
I like everything about agriculture. It's independent living that I appreciate the most. I guess I enjoy freedom a lot. Growing up under harsh conditions and hearing heartbreaking things all the time and seeing your elders sometimes cry, you know, it's not the most pleasant thing to see your parents at times cry. The first thing that makes me very happy, and I'm thankful that I've lived long enough to see it, that even my grandchildren work here now. They don't have to look for a job. And my family, immediate family, my children, all three of them are here.
At 95, Sarkis is grateful his mind is still sharp. He's always been active in the Armenian community. He served on the board of Holy Trinity Armenian Apostolic Church and the Armenian School. He's a member of multiple Armenian organizations, including the Armenian American Citizens League. He's now passing his love of not just his Armenian heritage, but his American heritage onto his great-grandchildren.
My older son, he's a grandpa now. We're enjoying that one. Grandchildren. And I'm living a joyful time. We love kids like that.
Another Armenian family going on its fifth generation in the Central Valley is the Peters family. They've been farming in Fowler since first arriving in the United States in 1896, almost 20 years before the genocide.
Early on, Grandpa bought a farm. He had 40 acres in Fowler. Then he bought another 20 acres across the street later on, but then he bought another 40-acre ranch in 1919. Well, we've grown. All the family, they've kept buying farms. You have to love the land. You have to love dirt. You have to love growing things, watching things grow. You're making something. It's my creation.
The Peters name is very recognizable in the community. The family gives back through the Leon S. Peters Foundation. There's the Leon S. Peters Business Building at Fresno State, the Leon S. Peters Honors Program at Fresno City College, the Leon S. Peters Rehabilitation Center, a community regional medical center.
When my Uncle Lee graduated from high school, he wanted to go at that time to college and become an attorney, but nobody had any money. They couldn't go to college. Uncle Lee was denied his education. Uncle Lee was a very self-educated man. He studied very hard, and whatever the challenge was, he was up to it, and he mastered it. He was able to see outside of a box.
Leon S. Peters, or Uncle Lee as he's known by his family, went to work at Valley Foundry in the 1920s. They made irrigation pumps. Peters eventually bought the company and, with the help of his brother Pete Peters, began developing and producing winery equipment.
When Prohibition was lifted, Uncle Lee was one of the few people in the country making winery equipment, and then he developed a press, and they went from there. The rest is history. And he ultimately became the biggest winery equipment manufacturer, I think, in the world. He was not only making pumps and filters and whatever have you, but he was making stainless steel tanks at the same time also. I think he just accelerated the winery industry to what it is. It was in the early 1950s when Uncle Lee had done very, very well in his businesses, And he said, now it's time to start giving back to the area that's been good to me. And so during the middle 50s, he started his foundation. I'm sure he was giving before that. But he started the Leon S. Peters Charitable Foundation around 1955. His main interests at that time, which are still carried on, were medical and educational. These were his major things, and I've always felt that the death of his mother made him interested in medical, because Grandma would have lived if they had better medicine.
Today, the Leon S. Peters Foundation helps support about 50 causes. Leon's nephew, Kenneth Peters, is the foundation's president. Kenneth and his brother David, and cousins Dennis and Janice, reminisced about Uncle Lee inside the gallery bearing his name inside Fresno State's Henry Madden Library.
At Christmas time, he would always make gifts to give to his customers or his clients. And some of them, I mean, he made this, and this is his patriotism. Obviously, there's the ship. I assume that was the Santa Maria or the
I don't know.
one of Columbus's
It
ships
looks like
coming
it.
in.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and over there he has a wine press, a wine bottle, and a champagne glass. I also had the privilege of working for him at Valley Foundry for 5 years, and very astute business. I mean, he had his business. He was very, very fair in business.
He told a story that brought tears to my eyes. It was a fella that worked at Fresno Motor Sales. He used to have a Cadillac. And every time his car was in the in the shop, the fella would take him to his office and then take him back. And he was a black fella, and he was a very religious man. And he always talked about his church. And so Uncle Lee asked him where his church was, and he drove over and showed him his church. And so, not even telling the man, he went and had the church re-roofed and repainted, in and out, in honor of this man. And he was saying the man was just crying to him, you know, but that's the kind of man he was. It wasn't, you know, not only Armenians, not only his Fowler area where he grew up, but he loved everybody.
Leon S. Peters helped break down barriers when it came to discrimination against Armenians. He was the first to become a member at the Sunnyside Country Club and the first to have a home in Fig Garden. His legacy continues through his family today.
And I'm quite sure my uncle would be looking down and everybody else would be looking around and be very proud. I mean, it's, the Peters name is very important.
Richard Hagopian grew up on a family farm not far from the Peters family.
I was born April the 3rd, 1937 in Fowler, California. About 2 years old, we moved to Selma. I was raised in a traditional Armenian house. We never associated with non-Armenians. Our house was always either our relatives or Armenian people. So we were raised in a Armenian social atmosphere in the Armenian Apostolic Church. That was a must. When I was young in school, when it was time to harvest the raisins, my dad would say, "You're not going to school this week. We're going to have to roll the raisins." We worked as a family unit, did most of the work, except what we couldn't do, they'd hire help. But most of the time, each Armenian family did most of their work themselves.
Another thing Richard picked up from his dad was a love of Armenian music.
My father always played music. He loved it. And in those days, there was no television. When company came, they used to play the phonograph and they used to get up and dance.
As a child, Richard first learned to play the violin. Then the oud, an ancient instrument popular in the Middle East. It's made of wood. He's been playing it now for nearly 70 years.
I got into several, at least 3 old-timer bands. They accepted me in when I was about 12 years old because I played violin, and it's similar to the oud, and I could play in positions and stuff, the old timers liked me, and they'd take me on the job, playing weddings, and that was a good education, because these were the musicians that came from the old country, and they were playing the music of their village.
With each song comes a specific Armenian dance that tells a story from the village it originated. Oftentimes they are line dances.
We performed a lot of picnics. Those picnics were big. On 4th of July and on Labor Day, it was nothing to have 5,000-6,000 Armenians in one place at a picnic.
Richard eventually started his own band, the Richard Hagopian Band. He's performed across the world and has multiple albums. In 1989, he was awarded the National Heritage Award and got to visit the White House.
When I'm playing and I see 500-600 young kids, Armenian kids, dancing under the roof, I get big satisfaction. I love it.
Richard has also passed his love for music on to his children and grandchildren. His son plays in the band, and his grandchildren are learning to play the oud. But sadly, he worries the passion his family shares for traditional Armenian music is fading.
The thing that worries me, I think that they've learned the music good, but I think eventually they'll run out of an audience. Some of the newcomer people say, "Oh, your music is so old." I said, "Yeah, but you go to church every Sunday. Almost, I see you around, and that music is 1,750 years old, and you say it's not old. It's traditional. It's a part of your culture."
Another part of the Armenian culture Richard is very familiar with is the food. For 36 years, he and his wife Geraldine operated Hagopian's Deli in downtown Visalia. They were known for their shish kebab. They cut their own meat.
In 1970, we decided to open a deli in Visalia. There was no Armenian delis there. And we worked, and I started cooking all the food. She used to cook all the other foods. And we stayed 36 years and retired out of it. And this book is printed in 1686. This is a very rare book and hard to come by.
Since closing the restaurant, Richard spends his spare time collecting Armenian artifacts. He especially enjoys books written by non-Armenian missionaries who witnessed the genocide. As for the music, anyone can enjoy the Richard Hagopian Band at the annual Blessing of the Grapes picnics, held on the grounds of the California Armenian Home every August.
This letter is dated July 5th, 1914, and it is from my grandfather's father, and it says, "My dear son, Sarkis Anaforian, the Turks are asking for the land back, but we are not paying attention. I don't have time to write very long because all the work of the house is on me, both to plow and harvest. Everything is to be done by me. The last advice to you, don't torture yourself for money. Awaiting your loving letter, I am your father, Hagop Anaforian." So,
Stephanie Berugian is no stranger to storytelling. She's made a career out of it as a longtime anchor at KC24, the Central Valley's NBC affiliate. But when it comes to her family story, emotions run deep.
when I look back and think about all that they went through to get here, I think they're great examples of people who are definitely survivors.
Growing up in Fresno, Stephanie was surrounded by her extended Armenian family. Holidays at her grandparents' house, enjoying Grandma's trademark pilaf, she was raised to be proud not only of her heritage, but also America.
After my parents got married and had children, I think it was really important for them to be American first, because I don't think they wanted us to experience that type of discrimination maybe that they felt as children. So I think that's why they probably didn't introduce us more to the language.
While studying at Fresno State, Stephanie was confused about her future. She eventually settled on majoring in broadcasting.
I'm sure my parents thought, oh my gosh, what's she going to do with that?
In news, it isn't uncommon for reporters to change their names, like a stage name for actors, something that rolls off the tongue easily. Berugian is not one of those names.
I realize that I have an unusual name. People look at it, it's got 4 O's, they don't know how to say it, and some people don't know what an Armenian is. They don't know what kind of name that is. But one of my professors at Fresno State in the journalism department, when I had talked about, working in broadcasting, he said, well, you're going to have to change your name.
This is KC 24-Hour News at 6. Coverage you can count on with Stephanie Barugian.
I'm proud of it. It represents a huge part of our community. Thousands of Armenians live here, and they understand the name. And I think it's really maybe exposed the culture to others who may not have been familiar with what an Armenian name looks like.
Stephanie started working at KC24 in 1982. She started behind the scenes, but quickly made it in front of the camera.
When I got my job at Channel 24, it was like such a proud moment for my grandparents, because for some reason that was their favorite channel. And so they were very proud of the fact that I was working on television. I think I was certainly the first Armenian in this community to work on the air. And, I know it was a very proud moment for them.
A 3-time Emmy Award winner, career highlights include her work with the Buddy Check program, which promotes monthly breast self-exams.
I'm so proud that we continue to offer this and just reinforce the importance of, self-exam and getting mammograms. And it really has saved lives. There are people who found their own cancer through their participation in Buddy Check. So, how often do you get to be involved in something that really does save lives? It's just been a complete honor.
Stephanie is also known for her reporting on the Armenian community. In December 2010, she traveled to Armenia for a series of stories that aired on KC.
Stephanie's Armenia.
It's just been a complete, honor, I think, to cover details about Armenia and our local Armenian community. We've contributed a lot to this area, and I'm just honored to be able to provide that message to our whole Central Valley viewing area.
With anything that I do, I don't like to be real precise, real exact.
Armenian Shishmanyan doesn't let her age or loss get in her way. At 60, she discovered she had a real gift for art.
So I decided to take some classes at Fresno State. They had a program that was offered to seniors at the time. Who knows what you have inside until you take a chance and, just try something new.
Probably best known for her sculptures, Armenia also draws, paints, and recently began working with pastels. Her work is on display at the 5th District Court of Appeals in Old Armenian Town. She was also featured at the Fresno Art Museum as part of an exhibit showcasing the work of Armenian artists. Armenia says her heritage plays a role in many of her pieces.
I think the thing about doing the Armenian works is that it's just something that came from the heart. It wasn't something that I had planned to do, but it was just, I was impelled to do it. I started working with clay, and the first dancer that I made was this one. And I just love Armenian music. I love Armenian rhythms. And I thought it would be a fun thing to do. And lo and behold, she was created.
Born in St. Louis, Missouri, both of Armenia's parents were genocide survivors. The family moved to Los Angeles when Armenia was 17. Her mother was a talented seamstress. She worked for the designer Galanos, who designed First Lady Nancy Reagan's inauguration dress. She met her late husband, Leo, at an Armenian Youth Federation outing. He was in medical school. They married and moved to Fresno, where he started his medical practice. Dr. Shishmanyan was a radiologist and a pioneer in his field. He brought the first MRI to the Central Valley and established Fresno Imaging Center. He passed away in 2011. Since her husband's death, Armenia has spent more time concentrating on her art. The mother of 4 has 10 grandchildren. She's passing her love for culture and Armenian heritage onto them. One of the most well-known Armenians was from the Central Valley.
William Soroyan was born in Fresno in 1908. His parents were immigrants from the area called Bitlis. They had moved here before the Armenian genocide, but were aware already of the persecution, and so they had come to America. At an early age, his father passed away at the age 3, and Soroyan went to live in an orphanage in Oakland, California for 5 years until he was 8 years old, and then his mother was able to bring him back to Fresno. And then at some point, very early, he became interested in writing. He liked to read, and he thought he could be a writer, and so he began to send out his stories. And very soon, by the 1920s and actually by the 1930s, he began to be published. And he very soon had a very rapid rise to prominence.
Right across from my grandparents' pool, which was called Sweet's Plunge, was where William Saroyan was born.
Saroyan grew up in Armenian Town and attended Emerson School. The author and playwright often mentioned Fresno in his writings. He was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Drama in 1940, and in 1943 won an Academy Award for the film adaptation of his novel, The Human Comedy.
Willie used to come in the bakery, and Willie had a voice that when he walked in the front door, it was at 95 decibels. Hello, Gracie. My mother's name was Grace. So they'd have a lunch of turshi and lemedrun and cracker bread, pita bread, whatever they had, and they'd spend an hour, a good, couple hours sometimes, visiting and talking about the old days. His personality was very outgoing. He was very vocal. He gave you his opinion on everything and anything. And he'd come in the bakery sometimes, and he had like a seersucker suit, and it would kind of be wrinkled up, and his tie would have soup stains on it. But he didn't care. He was his own man. He did what he wanted to do. He came to my graduation party when I graduated from Fresno State. He gave me a gift of 3-ring binders that were covered in a leather cover with a handle like a briefcase, because he knew I was going to UCLA. So he gave me that binder, and for the 2 years that I was working on my master's at UCLA, I used that binder he gave me. Great guy, good memory. He was special. I don't think people today realize what he did and how valuable he was for Fresno in the early days, because he kind of put Fresno on the map with the stories he told.
When it comes to sports, few Armenians have reached stardom. One of the most well-known is Jerry Tarkanian. The Hall of Fame basketball coach overcame adversity and rose to the ranks of champions. Born in Ohio, both of Jerry's parents were genocide survivors. From the start, Jerry loved sports.
There were Armenians playing football. There weren't that many playing basketball. And of course, he was short and not really quick.
When he was just a kid, Jerry's dad died. His mom remarried, another genocide survivor, and the family moved to California, stopping in Fresno before settling in Southern California.
Losing his father was really difficult, and his stepfather wasn't real supportive of my father's dreams and aspirations. His stepfather wanted to be a barber. He said, it's low overhead, you have a steady job, you don't want to get into sports, you're never going to make anything out of yourself in sports.
After playing basketball at Pasadena City College, Jerry transferred to Fresno State. It was a life-changing move for a young man with dreams of coaching.
He absolutely loved Fresno. Growing up as kids, things we heard about was his time in Fresno and his close friends.
It was at Fresno State that Jerry made lifelong friends, many Armenian. He married his wife Lois, and following graduation, took his first coaching job at Fresno's Edison High School. His first head coaching job followed at Fresno's San Joaquin Memorial.
He had the 2 smallest guards you ever seen, the Armenian twins. They won the city championship his second year there, and when my dad came back to Fresno for his 80th birthday, they had a birthday party for him. His whole starting 5 from that San Joaquin Memorial team came by, and I think most of them were Armenians. And they weren't very tall.
After coaching 2 years at Memorial, the Tarkanians left Fresno and made a series of coaching stops in Southern California. It was at Redlands High that Jerry began chewing on his trademark towel.
The gym was very hot. My dad's yelling and screaming. His mouth was getting dry, so he was running over to the water fountain. And you know how sometimes those water fountains don't go up very high, it just trickles. So he's there trying to, lick up some water. And he said, forget this. He wet the towel, chomped on it, got his mouth wet again so he could scream. Game went to overtime and they won. And he said from that point on, it was his good luck charm. So he kept it from that point on.
Jerry won 4 straight California Junior College championships at Riverside and Pasadena City Colleges before losing a 5th in overtime of the championship game. Next came Jerry's first Division I coaching job at Long Beach State.
My dad will tell you that in his opinion, those were the most amazing 5 years of his coaching career, and if not anybody's. They had no money at all. They had no resources, no tradition. In fact, they had only turned Division I his first year, and by his third year, they almost beat UCLA, had UCLA beat in the NCAA tournament, and lost by 2 points, the closest game UCLA had in their 7-year run of national championships. To do that at a school that had no money, no resources, no facilities, no tradition. His last 3 teams were all ranked in the top 5. It was truly amazing what he did at Long Beach.
After turning down the job twice, Jerry, Lois, and their 4 children moved to Las Vegas. Jerry was head coach at UNLV for 19 years. Danny Tarkanian played for his father at UNLV. Some of their most memorable games were against Fresno State.
He's always loved Fresno, not only playing there, but when he coached at UNLV, that was always the biggest game of the year for us. He'd fall asleep at night muttering, "The dogs are barking, the dogs are barking." And you just couldn't lose to Fresno. I always had my best games against Fresno because I knew how much it meant to my dad.
Jerry led UNLV to 4 Final Four appearances in the NCAA tournament. The Running Rebels won the national title in 1990 and nearly won it again the following year.
Throughout my father's career, he never thought that he would be able to build the schools that he was at into a big enough power to win the national championship, because they were really smaller schools, not the big elite schools, the Indiana, North Carolinas, Duke, UCLA's. So to finally get that championship and to be on the podium and being able to receive that trophy beyond the top of the whole college basketball world was a special moment for my dad.
Throughout his career, Jerry battled accusations of rule violations from the NCAA. He sued the NCAA twice. In 1998, the case was settled. Tarkanian received $2.5 million. The Tarkanians believed Jerry was a victim of discrimination, treated differently because he was Armenian.
The lead investigator, who ended up becoming the chief of the NCAA Enforcement Division, admitted under oath in court that he called my dad a rug merchant on more than one occasion in the office, which people in Armenia know that's a derogatory term. So they made racial remarks about him in the office and laughed about it. That's a fact. I believe that my father was persecuted by the NCAA throughout his career, trying to run him out of coaching. And he would never quit, he never stopped, he kept fighting, and there's no doubt in my mind that he was thinking, how can I quit when my mother overcame the genocide, coming to America, not knowing anybody, not speaking English, living through the Depression, losing her husband, and putting them through college, he and his siblings. How could I quit when she had faced so much and never did? There's no doubt in my mind that I kept my dad going. My dad never would let racial issues determine how he was going to treat people. And I think that was because of the way he was raised and what he had faced as growing up as an Armenian that was discriminated on many occasions. It certainly played into how he related with the African-American players that dominate sports today.
After leaving UNLV in 1992, Jerry coached briefly in the NBA. In 1995, he made his return to coaching at his alma mater, Fresno State. Danny was one of his assistants.
And the only reason he got back into coaching was because the Armenian community in Fresno was so strong and powerful and so vocal that when the job opened in Fresno, Welter didn't have a choice but to hire him. I think he would have been run out of town if he didn't.
Despite 6 consecutive 20-win seasons and taking the Bulldogs to postseason tournaments 7 times, Danny says his father wished he could have done more for Fresno.
Loyalty is the most important thing to my dad. He's instilled that into me. There's been no community has ever been more loyal to my dad than the Fresno community. And we did less for them than we did Long Beach or at any of the stops in coaching. We owe the Fresno community a great deal of gratitude.
Jerry was known for giving players second chances. He valued changing lives.
He just knew how to deal with people. He knew how to relate with people. He was able to build great loyalty among his players and his coaching staff. The night before my dad passed in the hospital, Melvin Eli called my father. He was in Japan at the time and heard my dad was in real bad shape. So I put the phone up to his ear, and Melvin Melvin told him how much he loved my dad and how he saved his life, that he would have been dead on the streets in Harvey, Illinois, if it wasn't for him.
He loved family, and he was religious. He was religious. Most people didn't realize how religious he was, but he was baptized in the National Armenian Church in Cleveland in '31. And he said his prayers every morning and every night, and he knelt to say them. He knelt to say his prayers.
Jerry passed away in February 2015, leaving behind not only a family that loved him dearly, but a world full of fans.
This poor little Armenian that started with nothing was able to make such an impact in life that the whole world was reporting on his passing.
I don't think Jerry realized how well known and how respected he was throughout the world. I mean, his death received notice in the London Times, in the Madrid Times, in Hong Kong, all over. In Las Vegas, to have the entire strip darkened. Now there were little lights, you know, surrounding it, but the strip was dark. And on the left side, there was this picture of Jerry after he had a big win, and he had wine and a cigar. On the left side, a really big billboard-like, and on the right side, so you saw the darkened strip, and then you saw those pictures on either side. It was really very impressive, and nobody, I mean, Jerry would never have thought they would do that for him.
For the past 24 years, there was an Armenian serving as an associate justice on the highest court in California, making decisions on issues as big as same-sex marriage and death penalty cases. Marvin Baxter retired in January 2015 after serving 2 12-year terms on the Supreme Court of California. The grandson of Armenian immigrants grew up in the small farming community of Fowler.
I had a great childhood. I probably spent most of my childhood either in the garage, working on cars, or at our ranch where we had our home, helping with the field work. At the same time in Fresno, of course, the schools, you had de facto segregation in most of the schools in the large urban areas, whereas in Fowler there was only one school, so everyone, rich or poor, all went to the same school from kindergarten all the way through high school. I think my graduating senior class, we had about 65 students.
Following graduation from Fowler High, Marvin moved on to Fresno State. He served as student body president from 1962 to 1963. Met his wife Jane. They married and moved to the Bay Area, while Marvin attended law school at UC Hastings.
I got my law degree, passed the bar, and started my career as a deputy district attorney here in Fresno County.
In 1983, after spending 13 years as a prosecutor, Marvin left his law practice to work as the appointment secretary for California Governor George Deukmejian, the state's first and only Armenian governor.
I can remember the inauguration quite well, and I'd say half of Fresno was there, even though Governor Deukmejian, never lived in Fresno. A lot of people always assumed that he did, simply because of the large Armenian population in Fresno, but he's actually and still is a resident of Long Beach.
In 1988, Governor Deukmejian appointed Marvin to be an Associate Justice of the California Court of Appeal for the 5th District. And then in 1991, he was appointed as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of California.
I couldn't have asked for a more fulfilling career than the 24 years I've served on the Supreme Court.
Now 75, Marvin splits his time between homes in San Francisco and Fresno. He's passing along the stories of his grandparents to his 4 grandchildren.
I've certainly shared the memoirs of Bogdasar Bogdasarian, which would be their great-great-grandfather, and to compare the challenges he faced with the challenges and opportunities they now have.
The last ones to get married at St. Paul Armenian Church downtown Fresno. We were the last ones to get married in the old facility before they moved.
38 years, 3 kids, and 3 grandchildren later, Charles and Debbie Puchigian could be considered an Armenian power couple. Charles, or Chuck as his friends call him, is an associate justice at the 5th District Court of Appeal. Debbie followed in her father Darren Kaligian's footsteps and is a Fresno County supervisor. Both had grandmothers that survived the genocide and grandfathers who settled in the Fresno area prior to 1915.
There's nothing like living out on a farm in a ranch and growing up, you know, among the trees and among the vines. And my first job was picking grapes. My dad sent us out, my brothers and I have 2 brothers, sent us out to pick grapes. That was my first job. And it's a great life. It's been the farm life is a great life.
Debbie grew up 6 miles west of Fresno, near all of her Kaligian cousins. The family farmed and operated Kaligian Dry Yard, a dry fruit business.
We lived with my grandparents, and there were 7 of us in a small ranch home, and they didn't speak English very well, and so we spoke nothing but Armenian in our home. I did not speak very much English when I started school, and but it wasn't so bad because my Italian friend didn't speak much English, and my German friend didn't speak much English, and my Japanese friend didn't speak much English, and so we were all together starting school, and we went all the way through school together.
Debbie graduated from Central High in Fresno State, where she played tennis and got her teaching credential. Chuck graduated from Sanger High, Fresno State, and Santa Clara Law School. In 1977, after just a few months of dating, Chuck and Debbie married. Chuck practiced law in Fresno, Debbie was a teacher, then after the election of Governor George Deukmejian, the family entered politics.
My first job in government was with Governor Deukmejian. I was on his senior staff and worked in the appointments unit, the same unit that was earlier headed by Justice Marvin Baxter.
He later worked as the appointments secretary for Governor Pete Wilson before running for state office.
I had 3 two-year terms in the state assembly, and then 2 terms in the state senate. Those are 4 years each, up until 2006.
Following an unsuccessful bid for Attorney General, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger appointed Puchigian to the California Court of Appeal. In 2008, a sort of role reversal, Debbie ran for political office.
In the back of my mind, I'd always thought, it'd be great. I would love to run for office someday, but I didn't really think I would get the opportunity. I really didn't.
Debbie grew up around politics. Her father, Darren, was a Fresno County supervisor for almost 20 years. He was the first Armenian elected to political office in Fresno County.
He loved it. He loved his job. He loved Fresno County. He loved what he did. After he passed away, we knew he had made a difference and made an impact, but as they started naming things after him, the community hospital named a center after him, the highway and the stadium and a park, one of the city parks, and you know, it was a real tribute to his love for this community.
It's a community that the Puchigians are proud to be part of, especially given the difficult situation their grandparents faced coming to this country.
I love what I do, and it is a way of giving back to the community that has just given us so much. I mean, I kind of wonder, where would we be if this great country hadn't opened their arms for the Armenians through the years, the immigrants to come, all the immigrants to come with their arms wide open and give us the opportunity to just seek out the American dream.
For them to have, just within 2 generations, a relative, a grandson, who has met 3 presidents and 5 governors and worked for a few of them, is incredible. I'm proud of those things, but again, they're really meaningless when you compare all of that to what they went through.
Armenians, wherever they go, or wherever they establish a community, they are the productive member of that society. And despite the fact that they witnessed the atrocities, that itself alone gave them even more determination, more strength for them to be active, productive, and not let that to be a setback for them.
Berj Epkarian grew up in Aleppo. His family, like thousands more, made a life for themselves in Syria after the genocide.
Despite the fact that it was a Muslim country, Christians did not have any problem in terms of having their churches, their schools. Our schools were able to teach us our language, our heritage, our history, So there was no persecution.
Berge grew up in touch with his Armenian roots. He served in the church, was a member of the Homenibman Scouts, similar to the Boy Scouts. He had a good life in Syria, but in 1979, he followed his brother and 2 cousins to Fresno for a chance at higher education. The father of 4 is a healthcare executive, serving as executive director of physicians' relations at community medical centers. And since 2014, he served as honorary consul of the Republic of Armenia in Fresno, the first ever in the United States.
My goal is to focus on strengthening the relationship between the Central San Joaquin Valley and the Republic of Armenia.
This is all done with a heavy heart. You see, Berge's mother and sister are still living in Syria, trapped. Because of problems in the region and ISIS targeting Christians, they are no longer safe.
I hear terrible stories from them. Days without water, without electricity. Sometimes there's not even food available.
There used to be 100,000 Armenians in Aleppo. Now only 10,000 remain. In the spring of 2014, Armenians living in Kesab, Syria, were forced out without warning.
Overnight, they could not believe that a genocide was taking place again against them. They were living in peace. They didn't do anything wrong. Yet, the extremists crossed the border from Turkey and attacked the village.
Despite the problems in the Middle East, Berge believes there is no denying Armenian strength to overcome adversity.
Today, our success, in not only in Fresno in the United States, but throughout the world, is a clear signal to the young Turks to tell them, whatever you planned, it did not succeed. Yes, you killed over 1.5 million Armenians. Armenians are strong, thriving throughout the world.
Along with hard work, Armenians continue to put a strong emphasis on faith and family.
Well, the church has always been central to what goes on in the Armenian community, whether you're talking about in Armenia or here.
The most important sort of cement in the community was the church, because it was also the tie with the old country. So by recreating that church and community, you're recreating Armenia.
All of our music, all of our culture, all of our language has been kept by the church. Because we have not been a free country in our history for a lot of years. Sometimes 100 years, sometimes 200 years, sometimes 900 years under the rule of someone else. But that church has kept the people and that heritage alive. Without it, we probably wouldn't be here today.
The closeness of family is so important, and I just think it makes us who we are. Some people say we're cliquish. I don't want to go there. I don't think we're cliquish. We're just very family oriented.
Because of the genocide, we put a higher value on family because we know how close we were to extinction. Armenians have a tradition of saving for the next generation, so parents would always save to put their kids into school, the best schools. They would sacrifice their own well-being, they sacrifice their own happiness for their children.
Family means everything. Family to me is the most important of all things. It's our family. We're very close, and I'm close to my cousins. We've lived together, we've grown together, we've done everything together, and they really aren't cousins. They're more like brothers and sisters.
I think it was really the family time that really kind of reinforced our culture for me. And still does. I mean, Christmas, it's about eating Armenian food. That's how we think of special times in our life. It's about eating the food of our culture.
There was a saying from the genocide on, they used to call us starving Armenians. Growing up, even in the worst times, I can't ever imagine an Armenian table that wasn't loaded from soup to nuts. The Armenians just love food.
Every Armenian household growing up had yogurt or madzun in the refrigerator, and That's, for whatever reason, several years back, well, a number of years ago, I decided that I was going to try to make madzun. I did, and so now it's sort of a ritual. Once a week, I make a gallon of it.
My granddaughter, she does enjoy cooking, and so I try to share with her because I know that she's got the desire to learn and she will do a good job learning. So yeah, I think it's very important that we pass on the things that we know how to make and that we enjoy making, because pretty soon if we don't, nobody will know how to do it.
There are so many competing interests today for people that for some people, they prefer not to participate as much as maybe their parents' generation did. There's just so many other pastimes, so many other diversions, so many other demands on a person's time that our amount of free time is less. Whereas, let's say 50 years ago, we didn't have all of those other things pulling at us for time. So it is, I think, diminishing in some ways, but changing also.
This is my favorite of the patients. I felt like he was my father.
Yuba Radojkovic isn't Armenian, but she knows the Armenian story. As the administrator of the California Armenian Home, she's made a career out of serving the Armenian community. The California Armenian Home on Kings Canyon Road between Armstrong and Temperance in Fresno has provided care for aging Armenians since 1952. In fact, the facility would not exist if it were not for the genocide and contributions from the local Armenian community.
Our land, which is 40 acres, was donated to build the small home to take care of people who didn't have anybody. I have cases too where they were telling me they had seen the massacre of their parents, and so it was very, very difficult. As the Armenian community in this area, they decided they want to do something because there is that passion and strong will, and we are as survivors, we're going to survive. This was the entrance to the Armenian home.
The home's founders, a group of Armenian men, oversaw construction of the original building. In the early days, before state and federal guidelines, residents cooked authentic Armenian meals in the kitchen, and most of the staff were volunteers.
They gave them a place to live and a place to feel that this is home, because everybody was Armenian, they spoke Armenian, it was the Armenian home.
The California Armenian Home remains a nonprofit organization. It's expanded. The residential area houses about 26 residents. The skilled nursing wing, which first opened in the 1960s, now has 120 beds. The facility might be called the Armenian Home, but not all residents are Armenian. About 40% are not. The home, however, continues to thrive thanks to the generous donations of the Armenian community and volunteer support groups like the Ani Guild and Home Guild.
All the improvements and all the things that you see, everything comes from the donations, whether the donation is $1 million or $20.
Residents enjoy activities like bingo. They watch TV, dine restaurant style. It's more than a care facility. It truly is a home. The California Armenian Home provides support at what can be a difficult time in one's life.
We were in Lebanon, Tripoli, Lebanon. We grew there. We graduated, and I became 19 years. I work as a school teacher.
The most important that I learned at that time is listen. Just listen, because they all had stories to tell. Or they would tell the stories of horror if they survive, or they would tell stories of their success.
For nearly 100 years, Armenian men have found fellowship in the XXX fraternity. Founded by 8 American-born Armenians at Fresno High School, the young men hoped the club would one day have 30 members. They used the Roman numeral for 30 to establish their name, Triple X.
The first meeting was held in Roding Park in May of 1918.
At that time, a lot of Armenian students weren't allowed to join any of the regular school, high school fraternities, or college fraternities. That was the reason they started.
Triple X has grown to 13 chapters in California and Las Vegas. The Central Valley has 3 chapters, Fresno, Selma, and Sequoia, which covers Tulare County. There are about 200 members in the Central Valley. For the men, it's one big family.
It's easy to call up a brother and say, do you want to go to a ball game together, or how about having lunch?
Triple X gives back, supporting organizations like the California Armenian Home, Fresno State, and the Ronald McDonald House. Scholarships are also awarded annually to students of Armenian descent. One of the organization's biggest goals is reaching out to younger generations to generate new membership.
A lot of our chapters have a junior chapter, and LA has one in the Sequoia chapter in Visalia. And we got 10 or 12 young gentlemen that are young or just getting out of college, and they're going to be the life of our Sequoia chapter and Triple X.
The 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide inspired a group of young Armenians to establish the High Movement, an organization aimed at bringing people together to enhance Armenian culture and push for broader recognition of the genocide.
My grandfather was actually a survivor of the genocide. He was 4 years old when it began. His mother and sister were killed actually in front of him. I think when you get a more personal connection, you can reach people better.
Members of the High Movement worked on the Heart to Heart project. Messages meant to teach about the genocide and inspire tolerance were written on the hearts and displayed at Fresno City Hall.
We might not see the same things as the older generation do, but this gives us an opportunity to share our voice and to say this is how we want to honor our ancestors.
The High Movement is made up of high school and college students and young adults. Some are involved in other Armenian organizations.
It's really great because I didn't know them before I got involved, and we've just reached out to other Armenian organizations and just grown High Movement even more.
High Movement allows young people, some 3rd and 4th generation American Armenians, to learn more about what it means to be Armenian.
All of us have found different ways to capture our Armenian heritage and honor our ancestors. Some of us do it by speaking the language fluently, others do it by how involved we are, others do it by giving back to the community. So I think there are other struggles that everyone faces, but we found a way to do it with what speaks to us in our hearts.
What do we have that really is our connection to our past? Our language.
Fresno State is one of the few universities in the United States offering studies in Armenian culture. It's estimated that there are between 500 and 700 Armenian students studying at the university. The Armenian Studies program launched in 1977, offering courses in history, language, literature, and art. There's even the Hai Shazum, a newspaper covering Armenian topics and events.
Look at the next one. Mer Hayreni Baladen. How many?
Barlow de Murgaditchin has been teaching at Fresno State for 3 decades. He is passionate about the program and the students it reaches.
We teach Armenian history is what we do, is we teach people a knowledge of the background and history of the Armenian people to understand the experience of the Armenians. That's what it's about. You learn about a group of people and you learn about their experiences, how they face those challenges, and that gives you greater knowledge about world history. It's just a diverse number of people that take the courses because they're interested, because they have friends that are Armenians, they know about Armenians, and they want to learn more about them.
Some of the students involved in the Armenian Studies program immigrated to the United States from present-day Armenia as children. While Armenians have called the Central Valley home since the late 1800s, the breakup of the Soviet Union brought an influx of Eastern Armenians to the region in the 1990s. Some have ties to the genocide, but most do not. Their ancestors came from the Russian Empire.
The Armenians had been divided between the 2 major empires. About 1/3 or 40% of the Armenians lived in the Russian Empire. And so when Russia went to war with Turkey, those Armenians were not subjected initially to the massacres because they were in Russia. So that was the nucleus of what is today the modern Republic of Armenia.
Tatavi Kovanesyan, a senior at Fresno State, moved to the Central Valley from Armenia when she was 15. Like any immigrant coming to a new place, there's been struggle.
I went to the library, got the books, and I started reading them. I had no idea what I was reading. But after, I think, like the 5th book, I started getting what was going on, because I kept like checking the words that I didn't know what they were in the dictionary. So with that and with, help of teachers and friends, I learned English.
The Armenian Studies program in Fresno State's Armenian Students Association has allowed Tatavik to connect with other Armenian students with similar stories and backgrounds.
I was trying to always find a place where I could feel like home. Like I could talk Armenian with people, I could see Armenian books, I could smell the Armenian.
I'm so thankful I came to Fresno State. There's so many campuses I could have gone to, but Fresno State has the Armenian Studies program. It's an incredibly just great program. It has enhanced my college experience for sure, and I don't think I would be as satisfied with my time in college if this program didn't exist. Because so much of what I do is related to the Armenian Studies program.
I'm personally very proud that there is a Armenian Studies program here, and other people are being educated about Armenian history and Armenians in general, because I feel like we have been neglected by many cultures.
Education is important to these young women. Their parents sacrifice so they can do more.
I know my parents wanted to pursue a life for me and my brother that somewhere that we could actually get success. We had relatives here in Fresno. They said, you can come here and your children will have a much better life. And even though my parents had good jobs and they were doing well, they realized that for our future, for our sake, they were going to give that up and come here. And of course it was a struggle. They didn't speak English. I didn't speak English either. We struggled a lot at first, but now they see that it has paid off.
The language barrier was huge, we needed some kind of income, and we were 5 kids, my parents, so it was hard.
Generous donations from the Armenian community help support Fresno State's Armenian Studies program. Each year, $70,000 in scholarships and grants are awarded to students studying Armenian studies. While Barlo Der Murgadichin teaches students at Fresno State about Armenian history, his sister, Zarui, is helping bring the culture to the youngest generation as principal of the Charlie Kayan Armenian Community School, the only Armenian elementary school in the Central Valley.
We offer small class sizes, we have music, choral music, and instrumental music, and in addition to that, we also teach Armenian language and culture daily.
Founded in 1977, the Armenian Community School was first housed in the Sunday school classrooms at Holy Trinity Armenian Apostolic Church. From there it moved to Fresno Street near McKinley. Its current location is in Clovis, off Villa near Herndon.
Our students come from all different backgrounds. We have first-generation Armenian students. We have students whose parents have been here 2 or 3 generations. We have actually students that are not Armenian also.
I love this school so much. It's like a second home to me. I love my friends here. I like the learning, the curriculum of it. It's a very good school.
Corinne Der Kalusian is a 6th grader at the Charlie Kayan Armenian Community School. She, along with her classmates, study the same subjects, like math, language, science, that are taught at public schools. But in addition, Armenian studies, including the genocide, are taught.
It's very sad what they did to our people. I want everyone to be aware of this tragedy that had happened.
Well, we planted the forget-me-not flowers in front of our school. The forget-me-not flowers are purple and inside of them are yellow. And they're flowers that represent the not to forget that the genocide has happened.
By attending the Charlie Kayan Armenian Community School, students like Sophia Yergart develop a deeper connection to their heritage and culture.
When I grow up and if I have kids, I can teach them like my mom taught me, because I want my kids to know Armenian so they can teach their kids and their kids can teach their kids.
Armenian school has been a very strong anchor for us to teach our younger generation to understand their heritage and their language, their history, and as they grow, create friendship with other Armenians, and hopefully meet their soulmate per se, and build their Armenian homes.
And I tell my children and my grandchildren, you know, it's something you don't ever want to forget, is your Armenian heritage. You see what your grandparents and great-grandmother and grandfather had went through, and you see all these pictures, and they can't even visualize that ever happening. And that's the problem what I think a lot of people have today. It happened in the past, don't worry about it.
With the observing of the 100th anniversary, one would hope that the world has learned some serious lessons from what happened to our people, from what happened to the Jews. To say that whatever the problem might be, whether it's real or perceived, killing people is not the way to deal with it. You don't wipe out a civilization for political purposes.
The Armenian genocide killed half of, or more than half of our entire population. Put that figure in perspective. Half of the entire population. And people still don't want to acknowledge it. But if you don't acknowledge it and move forward, then how do you learn from the history of what's happened and get better from the struggles that occurred?
Anything that we've accomplished really pales in comparison. From where they started to where they ended up, we had such a great head start on life that they never had.
They had the vision that this was the place to come to. And I can only be grateful that they made that decision when they did, and basically provided those of us who followed with tremendous opportunities that we would have not have had elsewhere.
This is a nation who witnessed atrocities, but yet if just you focus on what we have done in the past 100 years in this town, in this region alone, from farming to packing to development, from the academic world, I think it's a testimony of our determination.
Major production funding for this program was provided by the Leon S. Peters Foundation, Mrs. Frank Roxy Muradian, and by viewers like you. Thank you.